You think you know what's happening when a woman goes silent, but you probably don't. Because the moment you stop texting her and she stops texting you back, your brain starts running a movie that isn't even real. You assume she's done. You assume she doesn't care. You assume the game is over. But what if that silence isn't what you think it is at all? What if her no contact has nothing to do with losing interest and everything to do with what she's waiting to see in you? Most men rush to fill the silence before they ever understand what it's actually revealing. The truth is, this quiet moment could be the most important turning point in the entire connection if you know how to read it. Here's the part almost nobody talks about. When a woman goes silent, she's not just pulling back. She's gathering data. She's watching how you handle uncertainty, how you respond to pressure, and whether your confidence holds without her attention. It's one of the most misunderstood phases in modern dating. And that's exactly why so many men sabotage themselves before anything is truly lost. If you're ready to understand the hidden mechanics behind her quiet, hit like and subscribe, because before we go any further, you need to see what actually happens inside you the second her silence begins. You don't realize how fast your mind can spiral until the silence stretches longer than you expected. At first, you tell yourself, you're good. You're calm. You're in control. You've got this. And for a while, that feels true.
Then one afternoon, you check your phone, see a notification, and your chest jumps, only to realize it's not her. It's a random app update. But in that split second, you felt something. Hope, panic, both. So you start checking more often, every 10 minutes, every 5. You unlock your phone just to stare at an empty chat box, like maybe the act of looking will make her message appear. You reread old conversations, searching for hidden clues. Did she sound distant here? Was she already pulling away? You scroll through her feed, watching every story, every like, every cryptic post to see if any of it might secretly be about you. And here's the thing, it's not because you miss her that much. It's because silence exposes you. When there's no information, your brain fills the gap with the worst possible story. It's survival mode for modern men. Your mind hates the unknown. So, it creates a disaster to feel prepared. Suddenly, it isn't she's busy. It's she's done with me. It isn't she's quiet. It's she's happy without me. It isn't she hasn't replied. It's there must be someone else. You don't want to text her because your heart is overflowing. You want to text her because you can't stand not knowing. You want to kill the anxiety, not confess your feelings. And that's where things get dangerous. Because in this state, every impulse comes from fear. Fear of being replaced. Fear of not being chosen. Fear that you cared more than she did. Fear that you were just a temporary chapter in her story. Her silence didn't create your insecurity. It revealed it. All she did was step back. And suddenly, every doubt you've been carrying for years rises to the surface like it's been waiting for this exact moment. That's why this stage feels so brutal. Not because she's gone quiet, but because you didn't expect the quiet to say so much. And the hard truth is this: the problem isn't her silence. It's the fact that your self-worth is tied to whether or not her name shows up on your screen. And this is exactly where most men start to fall apart. Most men walk into no contact with the wrong mindset. They think it's a clever tactic, a reverse psychology trick to make her want them again. They treat silence like some kind of emotional boomerang. If I throw this no contact move hard enough, she'll come back around. But that's not how any of this works. And that's exactly why so many guys crumble the second she doesn't respond the way they imagined. No contact isn't a power play. It's not about who cares less, who waits longer, or who breaks first. If that's the frame you're operating from, you've already lost because you're still reacting to her. You're still building your next move around what she might think or feel or do. You're still making her the center of your emotional world, even while pretending to walk away. The real purpose of no contact is simple. It's a test of your emotional independence, not hers, yours. If her silence rattles you, if your mood swings based on whether she posts a story, if you have to white-knuckle your way through each day just to stop yourself from texting, that says everything about where you really are inside. You're not practicing self-control. You're practicing self-denial. There's a difference. And here's the uncomfortable truth. No contact isn't about seeing what she'll do without you. It's about seeing who you become without the constant hit of validation you are getting from her attention. If you're still obsessing over her reaction, you're not actually in no contact. You're in emotional limbo, waiting for her next move to tell you how to feel. There are a few clear signs you're using no contact for the wrong reasons. You're counting the days like a prisoner scratching marks into the wall. You're checking her socials to see if she misses you yet. You're fantasizing about sending a casual just checking in text to calm your anxiety. That's not detachment. That's dependency wearing a mask. No contact only works when you stop measuring your worth by her response. The minute you stop obsessing over what her silence means is the minute no contact actually starts. And once that shift happens, something big changes. Instead of asking, why isn't she reaching out? You start asking the much more important question. Why does her reaction have this much power over me in the first place? When a woman goes silent, most men immediately assume the worst. They treat her quiet like a verdict. She's done. She's moved on. There must be someone else. But women don't operate in a single dimension. Their silence usually comes from one of a few predictable patterns, and understanding those patterns keeps you from losing your mind. The first scenario is simple. She's mirroring you. A lot of women won't chase a man who's pulled back because they don't want to look needy or exposed. If you stepped away, she may just be matching your distance to protect her ego, not to punish you, not to play games, just to avoid being the only one holding the emotional bag. When a woman senses you've withdrawn, her instinct is often, if he's quiet, I'll be quiet too. The second scenario, she's healing or recalibrating. Women feel emotional friction intensely, and sometimes silence is her way of regulating herself. Maybe the dynamic got heavy. Maybe the relationship drained her. Maybe there were arguments, confusion, or mixed signals. In that space, no contact isn't a tactic. It's self-preservation. You'll notice this because she's not flaunting anything online. She's living, but she isn't performing. Then you have scenario 3. She's quietly testing your emotional strength. Women pay attention to far more than words. They watch your resilience. They want to see whether you remain grounded or whether you panic the second things don't go your way. She doesn't have to say, I'm watching your reaction. She already is. And if you break no contact out of fear, you answer her test without her ever having to ask the question. And of course, there's the fourth possibility. She's reclaiming her power or genuinely detaching. If she felt taken for granted, ignored, or undervalued, silence becomes her way of flipping the dynamic. Sometimes it's temporary. Sometimes it's the beginning of her moving on emotionally long before she ever says it out loud. But here's what matters most. You don't get to control which of these scenarios she's in. You don't get to diagnose her motives through wishful thinking or paranoia. What you do control is how you show up in the face of uncertainty. Because the truth is this, she's learning something about you right now simply by watching how you respond to the quiet. And that's why this phase is so important. Silence can build attraction or confirm every doubt she ever had. It all depends on your next move. There's a reason silence hits so hard in dating dynamics. It changes the balance of power instantly, not in a manipulative way, but in a psychological way. Human beings respond to 3 things almost automatically: scarcity, unpredictability, and mystery. And whether you realize it or not, these 3 forces shape how attractive you appear during no contact. Scarcity is simple. The less available something is, the more the mind pays attention to it. When you were always texting first, always ready to respond, always giving your time on demand, you became predictable background noise. Not because she didn't care, but because your presence required no effort to access. The second you step back, the brain recalculates. Why isn't he here like before? That's scarcity. Not playing games, just no longer handing yourself out for free. Then comes unpredictability. When someone can predict your reactions, they lose curiosity. And curiosity is the oxygen of attraction. If she could always guess exactly how you'd respond, what you'd say, how quickly you'd reply, then your dynamic had no tension. But when you go silent, calmly, consistently, without broadcasting your motives, she suddenly doesn't know where she stands anymore. That uncertainty wakes up her attention. And finally, mystery, the most misunderstood element. Mystery isn't pretending to be someone you're not or trying to look cool. True mystery is simply this: you're no longer wearing your emotional needs on your sleeve. You're not explaining yourself, begging for clarity, or trying to force reassurance out of her. You're composed, self-contained, and centered. She doesn't know exactly what's going on in your mind, and that makes her lean in. But there's one thing that can kill all three of these instantly: chasing. Every time you break silence out of fear, you destroy scarcity. Every time you react emotionally to something she posts, you destroy unpredictability. Every time you overshare, over-explain, or over-apologize, you destroy mystery. And the moment those three fall apart, so does your presence. Because here's the truth most men don't want to admit. If your silence was just an act to get a reaction, your energy will expose you the moment you cave. You can't fake groundedness. You can't fake self-respect. And you definitely can't fake being unbothered. If you want silence to work for you instead of against you, it has to come from the inside, not as a performance, but as a standard. If you want to handle no contact without falling apart, you can't rely on willpower alone. White-knuckling your way through silence will always fail. Because the real battle isn't between you and her. It's between you and the version of yourself that panics the moment you're not being validated. This is where your inner game gets exposed. And if you want to stay grounded, you need practical tools, not vague promises to stay strong. The first tool is worst-case rehearsal. Most guys avoid imagining the worst because they think it'll hurt too much. But the truth is, the fear of the unknown is always heavier than the pain of clarity. Sit with the scenario. What if she never comes back? Write out what your life would look like, what would actually change, and what you do next. You'll notice something surprising. Your world doesn't end. The fear loses its bite. And the less fear you have, the fewer desperate decisions you make. The second tool is emotional journaling. Every time you get the urge to text her, stop and write instead. Not poetic paragraphs, not dramatic confessions, just raw thoughts. I want to text her because I'm lonely. I'm scared she's losing feelings. I feel insecure today. When you put your emotions on paper, they stop controlling you from the shadows. You create distance between your feelings and your actions. That distance is where self-respect grows. The third tool is a presence reset. Anytime you catch yourself stalking her socials or spiraling into imaginary scenarios, pause for 10 seconds. Notice your breathing, your posture, your tension. Bring your focus back to what's happening right now: your body, your environment, your reality. This trains emotional sobriety. It stops you from drowning in reactions and brings you back to the present moment where you actually have power. The fourth tool is the self-respect filter before doing anything. Texting, posting, reaching out, asking mutual friends. Ask yourself, if I fully respected myself, would I do this? Let that question guide your behavior. 9 out of 10 impulses will disappear instantly because most of them don't pass the self-respect test. You can't fake calm, you can't fake groundedness, but you can build it. And once your inner game stabilizes, something shifts. Her silence stops feeling like a threat and starts feeling like space. Space for you to think clearly, space for you to rebuild, space for you to stop reacting like a boy and start showing up like a man. Once your inner world stops shaking, it's time to dial in your outer behavior, because no amount of self-work matters if your actions still scream insecurity. Most men ruin no contact, not because they're bad guys, but because they act from emotion instead of intention. This phase requires discipline, clarity, and a code. So here's the playbook that keeps your dignity intact and your power uncompromised. Rule number 1, don't reach out when you're weak. If you're lonely, bored, jealous, or spiraling after seeing something online, that's the worst moment to break silence. Any message sent from fear carries the energy of fear. Women feel that instantly. Don't reach out to soothe your discomfort. Handle the discomfort yourself. Rule number 2, only initiate when you're genuinely steady. You should be able to send a message with zero expectation, zero attachment, zero panic. If she doesn't reply, if you can't imagine silence being met with silence, you're not ready. Initiation comes from groundedness, not craving reassurance. Rule number 3, keep the message simple and clean. Not emotional, not heavy, not a dramatic opener. Something like, "Hey, hope you're doing well." Something reminded me of our conversation the other day. Short, warm, human, no pressure, no chase. It signals maturity, not neediness. Rule number 4, master your social media presence. No sad quotes, no indirect shots, no showing off, and absolutely no posting thirst traps with other women just to trigger her. That's not strength. That's insecurity dressed in designer clothes. Instead, post your real life, progress, projects, hobbies, training, wins, not to impress her, to reflect the life you're actually building. Rule number 5, handle real life encounters like a man in control. If you run into her, don't freeze, don't overdo it, don't rehearse a speech in your head. Greet her with a calm smile, a brief moment of warmth, and then continue living your life. You're not proving anything. You're not chasing clarity. You're simply showing that you're stable with or without her. This playbook isn't about playing games. It's about aligning your behavior with your self-respect. When your inner stability meets disciplined outer action, you become someone she can't easily predict, control, or dismiss. You stop being the man who reacts to everything she does and become the man who chooses how he shows up. There's a moment in every no-contact journey when the question shifts. At first, all you can think is, will she come back? But as the days pass and the emotional fog lifts, a more important question rises. Who am I becoming while she's gone? And that question matters far more than anything she does or doesn't do. Because here's the truth. Most men don't confront. Getting her back means nothing if you come back as the same version of yourself that pushed the relationship into uncertainty in the first place. If you're still reactive, still insecure, still hinging your worth on her attention, then even if she returns, you'll repeat the exact same cycle. Nothing changes until you change. This is where the identity shift happens. You stop operating like a man whose life pauses when a woman pulls away. You start showing up like a man who has direction, momentum, and purpose. Someone who can care deeply without collapsing. Someone who can love without losing himself. Someone who doesn't need a relationship to anchor his identity because he's already anchored in his mission. Compare the two versions of yourself. Version 1 is the guy who waits by his phone, checks her profile, replays old conversations, and lets her silence decide his mood for the day. He moves through life reacting to fear, reacting to loneliness, reacting to uncertainty. His world shrinks every time she doesn't respond. Version 2 is a man who uses the silence to expand. He trains harder. He builds deeper friendships. He invests in his craft, his career, his body, his confidence. He's not numbing the pain. He's converting it into progress. His value rises because he's no longer living in emotional survival mode. He's living with intention. And here's the paradox. The moment you stop trying to drag her back into your life, you begin reclaiming the parts of yourself you abandoned, your edge, your focus, your self-respect. When those return, you automatically become more magnetic to her, to others, and most importantly, to yourself. Reconnection can happen, sure, but it becomes a byproduct of who you've become, not the goal that controls your every move. You're no longer a man chasing validation. You're a man building a life he's proud of. That's the real essence of no contact. It's not waiting, it's rising. It's taking the silence and turning it into strength. It's proving to yourself that you don't need anyone to rescue you from your own emotions. Here's the truth most men never say out loud. Her silence isn't the problem. The real problem is how quickly you tie your value to her attention. One quiet week and suddenly you're questioning everything. Your worth, your appeal, your place in her life. But that reaction doesn't come from love. It comes from insecurity you never learned to face. No contact was never meant to be a manipulation tactic. It's not a trick to reel her back in or a punishment to teach her a lesson. It's a challenge, a chance to rebuild your center, strengthen your emotional discipline, and separate your identity from someone else's behavior. It's an invitation to stop living like your confidence depends on whether your phone lights up. And when you approach it that way, something powerful happens. Whether she returns or chooses a different path, you walk forward with more clarity, more backbone, and more self-respect. You stop negotiating your value. You stop chasing closure. You stop giving away your power for free. If this video helped you understand yourself even just a little, drop a comment saying, "I own my silence." That's not just a phrase. It's a commitment, a declaration that you're done letting your self-worth depend on someone else's reaction. And if you're ready to keep building this version of yourself, steady, intentional, magnetic, make sure you hit like and subscribe. Not for approval, not for validation, but because you're choosing to surround yourself with ideas that make you stronger, not weaker. Hold your ground, hold your silence, and remember this: self-respect beats desperation every single time.